Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. Would you please welcome the President of the George Washington University, Stephen Knapp.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome you to this very exciting event in which we are about to break ground. Actually, the ground we're going to be breaking is not the actual ground on which this new museum will be built. It's a kind of symbolic representation of it, but the site is right over here. And before I say anything else, I want to thank a number of people who have joined us. First of all, we do have quite a large number of the university's Board of Trustees, and we also have members of the Textile Museum's Board of Directors, as well as members of the University Administration. And I wonder if the trustees of the university would just wave at the crowd here, and we can acknowledge them, quite a few here. And directors of the Textile Museum, are you here in the audience that we can point to? There's a number of hands back there. Now, in preparing for this museum, the George Washington University Museum, which will be built between now and the fall of 2014, when it will be formally opened, we have established a board, at least the kernel of a board of directors for the new museum. And with that board is continuing to grow. We're continuing to add other members to it, but I did want to introduce those members who are so far part of that board, beginning with Bruce Begantz. Bruce, who's also the president of the Textile Museum Board. University trustee Bob Perry. Ann Fensterstock. I'm not sure if Ann is with there. There's Ann right there. Great. Ruth Perlin. There's Ruth. Sandy Crary. There's Sandy. And Cynthia Boyer. Cynthia right there. Thank you. Now, we do have quite a few distinguished guests here, and I certainly can't go through the entire list of everyone who's joining us this afternoon, but I did want to mention just a few. First, the Honorable James Leach, Chairman of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Chairman Leach. And with him, Dr. Carol Watson, Deputy Chairman and also a graduate alumnus of the George Washington University. Dr. Watson. The museum is going to be located on the other side of the screen that you see just off here to my left. It's going to occupy a very historic location on our campus. You know, we are this year celebrating the 100th anniversary of the arrival of the university here in Foggy Bottom. We were not always here. When we were first founded in 1821 as the Columbian College, we were actually located just above what is now Florida Avenue, which at the time was the northern boundary of the District of Columbia, and we ran a block wide and a half-mile long up the hill that is now Meridian Park. Part of the campus burned down during the Civil War when it was used as barracks and a hospital. And the university then moved down to the other side of Lafayette Square from where we are now. And it was not until 1912 that we arrived here in Foggy Bottom. And where we arrived was actually right on the strip behind me here of G Street, between 20th and 21st Street. And on the corner of 20th, the intersection of 21st rather, and G, is the historic Woodhull House, which is going to be incorporated into the new George Washington University Museum. The Woodhull House was built in 1855 by Maxwell Woodhull, and one of its first residents was the then senator from New York, Seward, who went on to become Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State. And that's a very important historical connection there, but the more important connection for us is that the house passed into the hands of Maxwell Woodhull's son, General Maxwell Van Sant Woodhull, and he was a university trustee. And it was he who actually brought about the move of the university, its transplanting from the other side of Lafayette Square to this location where we are right now. And the Woodhull House was donated by General Woodhull to the university in 1921. So just a few years after we arrived here. So this really is the source and origin of our Foggy Bottom campus. And I think the fact that we're going to be placing this extraordinary museum right in the heart of our campus and right at the point of origin of the campus in Foggy Bottom is, I think, symbolically appropriate, because it will be a crossroads It will bring together students and scholars, the general public, visitors from around the world, and it will bring together two anchor collections. Those are the Albert H. Small Washingtoniana Collection and the Textile Museum, and will provide new opportunities for exhibitions of our art collections, particularly the Luther Brady collection. And it will be a vibrant site for exhibitions, lectures, and other public programming, again, for students, for educators, for the general public, for scholars, and I think it will attract visitors and scholars literally from around the world, because we are bringing world-class collections to the heart of our university campus. None of this would have been possible without, I think, a great deal of effort, and I do want to single out, there are more people than I can possibly name connected with all the institutions involved, but I do want to single out three of them. First, Trustee Emeritus Dr. Luther Brady, who is, for whom the Luther Brady Gallery is named. The man whose passion for studying and preserving the heritage of American history was what caused him over a number of decades to build his extraordinary collection of materials about our great capital city, Albert Small. And someone we've come to know as just a terrific partner to work with as we have developed the plans for this project, the president of the board of the Textile Museum, Bruce Begance. And I have to note that we have a lot of university leaders here, but Bruce is sitting between the provost, Steve Lerman, but also on his left is Peg Barrett, Dean of the Columbian College, whose faculty and she herself have been very much involved in this. And one of the great things about this museum is it will have connections with just a wealth of departments across the university. Those include anthropology, history, American studies, Asian studies, the very distinguished and prominent museum studies program that is a great part of our university. So I did want to also recognize Peg Barrett for her efforts in this whole process. And of course, Trustee Bob Perry, who's done a great deal, I think, to bring the various elements that are coming together in this museum. He really has been a catalyst for this whole effort, really from its inception. And that's several years of effort. Now we're going to proceed to a little bit of ceremony, and it's now my pleasure to introduce the chairman of our Board of Trustees, Russ Ramsey.
Thank you, President Knapp. I really am honored to be able to say a few words today at the beginning of what is going to be another really an extraordinary journey for everyone in this room. And prior to saying a few thank yous and sharing just a few thoughts, I just feel like I'd like to once again, on behalf of all the George Washington trustees and all of the trustees of the Textile Museum, if you could just stand and be recognized, I'd appreciate it. Could everyone just stand here who's in either one of those roles? Because the journey to get here, it always feels like this sort of happens like that. But like anything in life, the journey to get here, takes a lot of sort of vision and hard work and real resolve by partners to really kind of come together to try and do something that's never been done before. And so when I say that it's a monumentous occasion, it's not like this has never been done before. We're not the first university to have a museum, but when you really sit and think about the GW Museum, and you put it into the context, the President talked about our 100th anniversary here on Foggy Bottom, but we're building up in 2021 to our 200th anniversary, as a university. And so, to be able today to really start another new chapter in this great university's history, but a very prestigious part of our history, where we're bringing together three amazing partners who I could not imagine could be better partners to really create something which will really be another unique part of this city. And so to the Textile Museum, to the Albert H. Small Washingtoniana Collection, and to the George Washington University Art Collection, and Dr. Brady, I just want to thank you for putting the trust in us, to putting the belief in us, that we can carry on and make you as proud as we are to be your partners. So thank you for that. But as people have heard me say before, vision, having a vision without execution is a hallucination. Since we really don't want to practice hallucination, despite Dr. Ackman actually has a little bit of expertise in that, I think. But it's about having sort of an idea of how can you make yourself unique and special. And so, when you really think about the collaboration that's going to occur in this museum and the interdisciplinary nature of how it's going to come together, and the fact that scholarship is going to play a big part of attracting students who really want to study and be a part of this, and sitting here in the heart of the nation's capital, steps from the White House, we really have an opportunity to attract lots of real interest in terms of both the public, interested scholars, leaders on a worldwide basis, and certainly, hopefully, from my point of view, be a leader in universities of how you can actually bring these together in the 21st century and really make something special. So I couldn't imagine a more exciting time for us to be coming together to sort of celebrate this beginning. And so with that, it's my pleasure and really an honor to have the opportunity to ask one of our great docs, Dr. Ackman, the dean of our medical school, to come up and introduce, for me, what is really one of my heroes and really a true American hero, Dr. Luther Brady. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Ramsey, and good afternoon. As an admirer of the arts, and along with Marjorie Weingold, a founding member and co-chair of the Friends of the Luther W. Brady Art Gallery, I'm thrilled to be here on this momentous occasion. Could I ask the Friends of the Luther Brady Art Gallery just to raise your hand? I know we have several in the audience. Thank you very much for being here. GW's collection includes over 3,800 objects of painting, ceramics, sculptures, historic furnishings, decorative arts, and works on paper, including photographs, drawings, and prints. Since March of 2001, and under the leadership of Lenore Miller, the Brady Gallery has been the professional showcase for art at GW. Temporary exhibitions are staged throughout the academic year and include university-related shows and permanent collection exhibitions, as well as shows of historical and contemporary significance, often with a focus on the Washington area. With the birth of the GW Museum, this collection will find an expanded home and have the opportunity to be seen by a wider community and to reach new heights. Luther W. Brady, the gallery's namesake and benefactor, is a world-renowned oncologist who earned his undergraduate and medical degrees at GW. The medical director of the CyberKnife Center of Philadelphia, the Hilda Cohn American Cancer Society Professor of Clinical Oncology, and a distinguished university professor at Drexel University College of Medicine, Dr. Brady transformed the field of radiation oncology, serving as president of major professional societies in addition to receiving numerous honorary degrees from prestigious institutions throughout the world. All the while, Dr. Brady has demonstrated a fierce commitment to the arts, both as a patron and through board service for many arts organizations, including the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Opera Company of Philadelphia, the Santa Fe Opera Company, the Curtis Institute of Music, and others. Throughout his devoted service to these various institutions, Dr. Brady has remained directly involved with patients and his alma mater, the George Washington University, as a member of the GW Board of Trustees and the GW School of Medicine and Health Sciences Dean's Council. We ask Luther Brady to please join us and represent all of the donors to GW's collections and to unveil a board illustrative of this collection. Dr. Brady.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the stage Trustee Bob Perry.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It truly is a pleasure to be here this evening. Over the last decade, I've gotten to know a person that is truly a great American, a philanthropist, a father, and a collector. Now, before I talk about this gentleman, I'd like to recognize his beautiful bride, Shirley Small. Shirley. And Albert's 29-year-old daughter is here, Susan. While Albert may take credit for collecting over 60 years of his life, America's history, heritage, and what this country stands for, had it not been for Shirley, he probably would not have been a collector. At the time they were dating, Shirley was in New York and attending a college that required her to work on Saturdays. Albert would go see Shirley, and while she was working, he would walk the streets, and he'd go through in bookstores. And back then, the books were all out on the sidewalk, and you'd see the old books. And one bookstore he walked into, he found a manuscript of Washington, D.C., how it had been plotted out by the corners of the District of Columbia. That started to bug. And over 60 years, he collected the world's premier collection of the Declaration of Independence. Unfortunately, it's at his alma mater at the University of Virginia. And he started collecting Washingtoniana, which is the premier collection of the history of this city. We had the second annual symposium on Monday. Albert's birthday, by the way, was on Monday. He's 87 years young. Happy birthday. We had our symposium, and it had to do with his collection that's relevant to this city and the Civil War. And many of the audience were students, and they just were glued to the lectures that we had, and it's the research and scholarship and the programs that was Albert's quest to share with future generations America's heritage, its background, and what created such a great city. And rather than sending his donation or his collection to some of the people who were vying for it at the time and just hang on walls, he really wanted future generations to be able to appreciate this collection. There's a lot of collectors in the world. There's less givers. And I can tell you that Albert H. Small is a giver, and we're very much appreciative. Albert, will you join me up here, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the stage Provost Steve Lerman.
Thank you all for being here. My connection to the Textile Museum, which I'll talk about as another one of the pillars of this great George Washington Museum, is at least for me personally interesting, because my first connection with it, and as many of you know, this is my third year at the university. Believe it or not, my first connection with a discussion about the Textile Museum happened while I was driving from my wife and I's previous home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, to come to our new home in Washington and to join the George Washington University's administration. And while we're en route, I knew there was a phone call from a guy named Lou Katz. Lou and I had met perhaps twice during the interview process, and Lou's pretty distinctive. He can't be here because of a family emergency, but the truth was I had probably met about 50 people in 3 days, and I always had trouble putting the names and faces together. But he was on the phone, and we was talking about this rather strange idea, at least to me, of thinking about something called the Textile Museum, which I knew about essentially nothing, merging into the George Washington University, combining our strengths, and creating a new institution that would house that collection as well as others. And so what's fascinating, I think Russ Ramsey talked about it very briefly, is in any given day you don't feel like anything really got done most days, but over the arc of 3 years we moved from conversations that leaders like Bruce Begance and Lou Katz and others, this conversation about a somewhat out-of-the-box idea, to a groundbreaking for a real building, a real museum with this world-class collection. And so for me, part of the fun of being here is it feels like a conversation that began literally before I got here has now come to fruition, and at least I can check something off the list of things to do. So with that, this is going to be an amazing place, and an amazing collection will reside within it. Obviously, the collection that Albert Small has provided will be part of the anchors, one of the two anchors, but the other anchor will be the amazing collection of the Textile Museum. The Textile Museum will offer an incredible range of opportunities for our students. And I think the theme you see with the Albert Small Washingtoniana Collection and the Textile Museum collection coming here to this new George Washington University Museum is that I think museums have either one of two characters. They are either static places, places you go to see stuff, and there's great value in that. But I think a richer sort of notion of museum is a place where people come to learn things, where students use the collection and the facilities to build a better understanding of American history, or of textiles, or of pre-Columbian art, or whatever it is. And a living museum is one that integrates scholarly research, teaching, and a collection together. And that really is the ambition of this wonderful new museum. So I'm looking forward to the collaborations that will happen here. They'll happen with our faculty, with our students, with our deans, that will create a museum that is more than just a collection or set of collections, that's more than just a teaching place, that is really the sum of those things to add to create something much greater. So with that backdrop, it's my pleasure to invite the president of the Textile Museum's Board of Trustees, someone who I've gotten to know quite well, who I admire enormously for his vision about the benefits of linking together the Textile Museum with the George Washington University, Bruce Begance. And I'd like to invite him to the stage, and together we'll unveil one of the museum's many masterpieces. Bruce, why don't you come on up? So what we're going to unveil is just one of over 19,000 objects that are in the collection of the Textile Museum, and that collection that spans some 5,000 years of textile history. What we're going to unveil, and I'll explain it because some of it won't be that obvious, is an embroidered leather riding coat that was made in Central Asia in the late 1800s. And this offers just one glimpse of the vast array of fantastic holdings that are part of the Textile Museum collection.
One of them's an engineer.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope after we conclude the ceremony, we're about to actually have the virtual groundbreaking itself in just a moment, but I did want to encourage you to take a look at we have a number of samples of the collections that are displayed around the inside of the tent here. So as you're continuing to converse during the reception, I hope you'll have a chance to look at some of those. And of course, we have one of those samples right here has just been unveiled. So it's now my pleasure to invite the first round of diggers to join me behind the elevated trough here on the stage. And those are Dr. Brady, Mr. Small, Mr. Begantz, Chairman Ramsey, Provost Lerman, Dean Barrett, and we're also inviting a student, Hillary Watt, to join me in this ceremonial breaking of ground. Who does the next round?
And now we are set for the second photo dig. For the following people, please join President Knapp and Chairman Ramsey on the stage. Cynthia Boyer, Sandy Curry, Ann Festerstock, Ruth Perlin, and Stu Casson. Would you please join Chairman Ramsey and President Knapp on stage? Thank you. Thank you. And now with the following guests, please join President Knapp and Chairman Ramsey on stage for our third dig photo. Nelson Carbonell, Myron Kurtzen, Gary Granoff, Stu Casson, Steve Ross, Madeline Jacobs, Alan Fraun, Ellen Zane, and Diana Enriquez.
I brought my own.
Thank you. And as those folks come back to their seats, we would now like the following guests to join President Knapp and Chairman Ramsey on stage for our fourth photo. Richard Blackburn, Lee Fenterstock, Michael Hoffman, Mark Hughes, David Colgood, Richard Knott, Gerald Lazarus, Bob Perry, T.D. Williams Davies, and Scott Anley. Now we're moving on to our fifth photo. And with the following people, please report to the stage. Jeff Ackman, Peg Barrett, Charles Barber, Leo Chalupa, Aristide Collins, Stephen Irvin, Marina Ellis, Lynn Goldman, good job, Jean Johnson, Alicia Knight, Forrest Maltzman, Diane Martin, Mike Worsberger, Beth Nolan, Barbara Porter, Terry Reed, Lorraine Bowes, and George Weldon. We have one more photo op. We would like the following people to please join President Knapp on stage. Jim Leach, Carol Watson, Bruce Pagans, Cynthia Boyer, Sandy Cree, Rod DeBartman, Stanley Owen Roth, and Window Swan, please. And Nancy Gayworks, would you please join our party on stage? Thank you.
Also, I wonder if our director, Rick West, could also come up to join us, if Rick is here. There he is.
Thank you all very much. And to close off our program, once again, we welcome to the podium Dr. Stephen Knapp.
Thank you very much once again for participating in this, and I do want you to resume the reception. I just want to make one very brief announcement, which is that we now have a new member who's joined the board of the museum. So in addition to the board of the Textile Museum, the board of the University Museum here, remember I announced earlier a number of people who have agreed to serve on the board as we prepare this project, and that is Dr. Luther Brady, who's now the newest member of the board. So just wanted to thank him for that. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our ceremony. Please enjoy the rest of the afternoon and the evening. Thank you.